I'd like to talk a bit about the lady in the statue to my rear. Her name is Anne Hutchinson. She was expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony back in the year 1637 for religious dissension. She has at her side here her daughter Susanna, and this statue was sculpted by Cyrus Dallin, who is also known for sculpting the Great Spirit outside the Museum of Fine Arts on Huntington Avenue. Also the statue of Paul Revere on the Revere Mall in the North End, and also the statue of Massasoit down in Plymouth. Now, the reason Anne Hutchinson was expelled is she was a lady ahead of her time. She was holding religious meetings in her house, and she was preaching a doctrine slightly different to what was acceptable to the Puritans under the command of the governor at the time, John Winthrop. The issue at heart was the difference between the covenant of deeds, which meant that to get into heaven, a person would only get into heaven as a result of their good deeds, and the covenant of grace, which meant that if one accepted the grace of Christ, that in itself was enough to get into heaven. She believed that the ministers at the time were not preaching the covenant of grace as much as it was deserved to be preached. They were concentrating more on the covenant of deeds. This was, in the eyes of John Winthrop, a slander against the ministers. And for that reason she was put on trial for that charge, and also the fact that she was creating dissension within the colony and delving into aspects of religion, whereas it was not the place of a lady to do so. That was the field reserved for the ministers and certainly the menfolk. After a trial, she was convicted of slander against those ministers, and as a punishment, she was expelled from the colony of Massachusetts Bay Colony. She and her followers, which numbered about 60, in the fullness of time went down to present-day Rhode Island and founded a plantation down there which gave rise to the town of Portsmouth. She is important in American history because, due to the fact that she preached religious freedoms, it led to the doctrine of religious freedom being enshrined into the charter which was granted to the colony of Rhode Island, and in the fullness of time which was written into the United States Constitution. And that is why Anne Hutchinson was very important in American history. She was an icon and much admired in female, the ability of females to reach their proper place in society. Unfortunately for her, in the year 1643, she and 5 of her children were killed by an attack of Native Americans down in what today is known as the Bronx, and that time was known as New Amsterdam, and that was unfortunately the end of Anne Hutchinson. Her great-grandson, Thomas Hutchinson, was the man who was governor of Massachusetts on the outbreak of the American Revolution, approximately 140 years after these events. Thank you very much.